Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. We're simulcasting our audience today, both for our radio audience as well as tuning in, of course, via social media as well. So, welcome us tuning in at Max WYAD 94.1 FM, WYADonline.com. Glad you all could be with us, but also just joining us online virtually through Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and on Instagram. We're glad you all could be with us as well. I have a first timer that's joining us here in 2025. Summer Watson is someone I was introduced to last year. She's making her first appearance on our broadcast to talk to us about her amazing journey, what it's been like for her to empower, as well as, of course, to inspire individuals, but also the work she's been able to do through Core Women LLC. If you're just finding out about that, I want to let you guys know exactly what it is, how it's able to help individuals and businesses, and also let you guys know to stay connected with Summer and all the great work that she's doing. Now, if you guys are joining us on the social media side, I will be monitoring the comment section, so feel free to engage with us if you have any questions or comments for Summer. But Summer, thank you so much for the time with us. Really appreciate it.
It is a pleasure to be here with you, Cyrus. I was so excited about this interview. I'm ready to get into this, and I'm excited about 2025. How about you?
I am very excited. And I have to give a shout out to our mutual friend, Don Marie Westmoreland, who introduced the two of us. And it goes into a lot of what you've been able to do those summers. So let's begin there. What has it been like for you to build a platform that not only is able to service businesses, we're going to talk about that, but also to remind individuals of what's possible? What has that been like for you to kind of settle with in your life?
Wow, Cyrus, you're tapping into some deep stuff there for me, because the way that this evolved wasn't just, oh, I want to build a business, which is probably the situation for a lot of different people. It's, how do I build a business with the wisdom, the expertise that I have? Am I ready? What does that look like? What am I offering? But more importantly, what have I seen over the years? How have I been conditioned? What are my values that also stream into what I want to do as a business owner? And a lot of that was formed early on in my life, as a business owner, or as a child. I was raised predominantly by a single mom in California. And I come from a very diverse background. So a lot of that too had to do with, who am I? What am I? What is my value? And I question that a lot because I do come from such a diverse background. I am Filipino, Armenian, European, Mexican. And so it was like, where do I belong? Where do I fit in? And so a lot of that was searching about who I am, getting to know about different cultures, understanding. And that kind of evolved in my life, where I then, graduated from high school. I went to Berkeley, UC Berkeley, and even there I was still exploring, and people would laugh and say, "Are you a culture major?" And I said, "No, I'm just very interested." So, whether it was art or film or African American film, or if it was Native American such and such, or if it was, I wanted to soak it all in. I wanted to learn. And at the end of my years at Berkeley, as I graduated, I thought, aha, I want to go to law school. So, this kid out of college, I thought, I'm gonna apply. I don't know if I'll get in, but I want to try. And I applied, and I got into an East Coast school, and Quinnipiac University. And so I went. I drove my car across country, and I went. And my grandmother's like, "You're not going alone. Take a friend." I was like, "Oh, thanks. That's awesome." So we took 2 weeks and we explored the United States. That was my first time driving across the United States. So went to law school, and there I decided, I don't know if this is the right place for me. I want to help people, but I want to help people in a different way. And at that point, I also married my high school sweetheart after getting out of law school, a couple of years after that. And he had joined the military. So during that time, while he was in the Marine Corps, I went to get my master's degree. I also got my doctoral degree in clinical psych. And I realized, this is the way I want to help people. I want to help them build programs that change people, that support people, that change communities in a way that they want to see change made, right? So that meant inviting people to the table, doing those assessments and evaluations that really integrated with their values, their beliefs. So we weren't changing things in a way that we were just coming in and going, oh, we're going to change A, B, and C. No, that's not the way to do it. we wanted to grow that community, invite that community to the table and see what their real pain points were. So I did that in nonprofit, for profit, and then I switched my gears into the clinical arena of psychology. So I started working, doing, being a clinician for hospitals, locked facilities, and that was a really eye-opening experience. Working in a locked facility, in one of the largest locked facilities in the state of California, in Sacramento, in mental health. And so I had a great mentor. And all along my journey, Cyrus, I've had mentorship. I couldn't have done without mentorship. I am so grateful and blessed that I had that mentorship, because they showed me certain things that I wouldn't have known structurally, just strategically, as I'm coming and into different systems. So whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a for-profit, whether it's a local government, right? So that was super helpful. And then I could integrate my personality, I could integrate my skill set, my innovation into that. But I needed the support of those mentors as well. And I'm going to do a shout out real quickly to Dr. Silas Gully. And he was my mentor in Sacramento, and he supervised 1,500 of my clinical hours. And so he was amazing. So if I had an issue, or if I would see what he was doing, and he would be a great model. And it was really imperative in a locked facility, in a locked setting, because we had to work collaboratively. We had to work closely. It meant understanding where we were with our clients as they progressed, or if they were coming in, and really dealing with some major issues. So as that evolved, and my husband finally retired from the Marine Corps, and we had moved across the country many times. We had lived out of the country. We lived in Japan for 3 years. So as that evolved and he retired, I looked back on my journey and said, where do you want to be now, Summer? How do you want to give back? How do you want to bring all that insight, wisdom, and expertise into something that you can build? So I built Core Women.
Yeah, and a few things you mentioned there, Summer, I want to go back to, because it's interesting here you talk about how people saw you when you were in college, and the question they had for you, but also what you had to realize about yourself. And I want to ask you, you mentioned, of course, also your mentor. I mean, it's obvious that people saw something in you. Was it easy for you to see that thing in yourself?
Cyrus, that's a great question. And I'm going to go back to those formative years for me, from 10 to 18, when I will go back further. My dad, he helped build my foundation into, you get up, you be strong, you are self-directed, and don't look for help. I'm not going to be there to support you, essentially. And he's like, you're going to have to get yourself back up. When you fall, get up. And he was tough. He was really tough. And so I took that along with me, but I also felt, as I learned more about the psychology of how he was presenting, that he also worked in a survival mode because of the way he felt about himself, right? And he was a business owner. He did well, but he raised us in a very tough way. Well, when I went to go live with my mom from 10 to 18, she was tough in her own way, but she was there to help. She wasn't there to swoop in. She said, hey, listen, you got to do certain things for yourself. I am a single mom, and you got to start working early and understanding what that means to make your own money, to buy your own things. If you want a prom dress, you're going to buy a prom dress. If you want a yearbook, you're going to buy your yearbook. You're going to do these things, but I can provide you the essentials. But I want you to have a work ethic. I want you to know that you have value. What you're giving to the world and how you're presenting to the world has value, right? And so having that foundation, having somebody tell me too that I can do anything, was extremely helpful. It wasn't that I didn't question like where I fit in, because a lot of times, just because of my racial makeup, I think that caused some questions, because people automatically made assumptions about how I was raised, or the culture that I was raised in, or they would directly start speaking a certain language to me. And I'm like, wait. and so, we talk about not making assumptions, but still today, I will go up to a counter at a restaurant and somebody will automatically start speaking a different language and to me. And I don't care if it's Spanish, Italian, Armenian, whatever it is. It's like, it's just, it just happens and that's okay. Right. And I've had a lot of conversations too with people who will automatically look at me and make assumptions and push back or push away and so I've had to sit down and have, just real conversations, authentic conversations where they get to know me.
Yeah.
And it didn't offend me. And I didn't get exactly tired of it, but it was also, I looked at it as a learning opportunity for both them and me.
Yeah. I love that you said that because I think that's an interesting connection with what you're doing with Core Women LLC then, Summer, because you're allowing people to know, of course, not only they can be seen, but also the effectiveness that they can have wherever they may be. And I think that's the great thing. We're going to dive more into that. Hello to you, Don. Don's joining us on Facebook. She says Summer is leading the way to help leaders improve their leadership and cross-generation mentorship for companies. We're about to dive more into that as well, Don. I think that the great thing is that in having the journey that you have, and I tell people a lot of times, Summer, that my journey definitely helped me to get and do what I do today, and do it with a lot of empathy and compassion for individuals. It's very obvious you're able to bring that in different ways. But you also a person that is, as you were talking about, even going back to what you mentioned about college, you have diverse interests. So how did you bring that diverse interest into what you were building with Core Women?
Oh, thank you for that. I have a funny story too about that, Cyrus, going back to college. I had declared psychology as my major in undergrad, right? And I got so bored with it because it was memorization. It was a lot of theory. It was not a lot of practice. It was just a lot of theoretical stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I got to get out of this. And then finally, one of my friends who was an engineer, declared engineer, he's like, you've got to declare it. You've got to declare and it was like spinning the globe and going, boom, that's it. I'll do that. Right. And so I ended up doing that. But as we come back to your question about how that integrates with Core Women was really a makeup of all those years, all that wisdom. And it was also a learning curve for me too, because I had always worked for someone else. Right. Yeah. And as a military spouse, bouncing from place to place every 3 years, it didn't look great for the resume and that was not the trajectory that I wanted to take. I wanted to be, I'm going to date myself here. So when I grew up, I watched movies like Working Girl, Baby Boom, the 9 to 5. And I looked at women and how they were presenting in the workplace, how they were breaking the glass ceiling, and what they were doing to make a difference, and having to be invited to a table. And I thought, well, how can I make my own table?
Yeah.
Right. And what is that going to look like? And I had a grandfather who was an exceptional entrepreneur, and he built a business by himself. But he pulled in people who could also help support that. And so as I was building Core Women, it wasn't a quick build, right? It's taken time. And I thought, how do I want to build it? And Core is an acronym for something. So it starts with a K, and it's how we as human beings move through the world. And with that energy, how are we kinetically connecting? No matter what background, where we're from, how are we actually making an effort to connect? How are we organically learning from one another? How are we reshaping our lives through diverse interaction? And how are we empowering each other to promote change? And those principles run through everything that I do in Core Women. And so with that said, no matter if it was a podcast that I was building, because I started building the podcast in 2018. So I've been doing that for 7 years. Whether it was an in-person or digital seminar conference that I've been doing for years now, all those principles ran through that, to be able to support people, to strategically empower them in a way that they could build their business or feel empowered personally as well as professionally. And what did that look like for them? What was their why for doing what they were doing? What was their, what I call PPI? What was their passion, purpose, and impact? And for me, those are three things that I love to continue to look at when I'm building something. What's my passion about this? What's my purpose for this? And what's my impact? That how am I going to support and influence community in a way that is going to be healthy and helpful?
Yeah, and I love the way you've been able to do that and do it in different ways. Hello to you, Melissa. Good to be able to see you over there on Facebook as well. So you guys over there on YouTube as well. If you guys have any questions or comments for Summer, make sure you guys do put those in the chat. We'd love to be to bring those in. For those joining us on X, I cannot pull your comments in, but we'll be able, of course, to like them after the broadcast. So please feel free, though, if you have any questions or comments for Summer, put those there as well. So I want to talk about 2025 and core, because I think what is so great and people hearing your story, and I said to Summer before we went live, because it was her first time was on my platform, I wanted our audience to get to know you, Summer, but also to see the connection. I think anyone who's heard about not only your upbringing, what you were able to do, and then even as you mentioned, of course, as a spouse, being able to know what it's like to be a military spouse. Service is a big part of what you're doing with Core Women. So I want to talk about service in business, because I think that is the interesting thing you're able to do now with Core Women. Talk to us about the needs that you're able to help businesses with, Summer, and why you're so excited about that this year.
Thank you for that question. I would first like to say hello to Melissa Banks. Hi, Melissa. So Melissa was on my show as well, and she's amazing. What she's doing in community is fantastic. So, in 2025, starting in 2024, I really wanted to sit down and do some self-reflection and think, what was it right now that community really needs? What am I observing that I can create based on something I can create that will help support businesses, their workforce? And so as I started to think about this and look at this, I started to develop something called Core Mentorship Solutions. Mm-hmm. And Core Mentorship Solutions is a new approach to mentorship. It is a cross-generational mentorship program. So I started working on that concept. I started working on the theory of that and taking that theory and imposing some of the principles of Alfred Adler. Now, as a clinical doctor of psychology, I've had a lot of experience of how do I practice? What do I want to practice in a way that I can help support people? And you have to know, a lot of people in the clinical world will say, well, I come from a very eclectic background, right? Or and that's great, but you absolutely need to know your theory that you actually are using. And two of those theories were, one, that I'm an Adlerian. So from Alfred Adler, he created a theory. He deviated from Freud. He worked directly with Freud, but he said to Freud at the time, listen, Freud, there's more than the subconscious where we're functioning out of, there's more than that. And Freud didn't really like that. And so that really caused a division between the two men. So Adler kind of did a detour and he said, you know what? I need to start looking at the other variables that influence behavior. And so when he started looking at that, he became known as the father of humanistic psychology. He became known as someone who looked at the framework of psychology from a holistic perspective. Did he completely omit the subconscious? No, he looked at the subconscious, but he also brought it into the future, into the now, right? Where he was looking at also 0 to 5, like how are kids being raised? What does their foundation look like? What is their conditioning? And guess what? All of these questions came into play when I started creating Core Mentorship Solutions, because again, we've got to look at the company's foundation. What's influencing that foundation? We look at it from a holistic perspective. So when I started creating this program, I knew it was going to be something that could really help people because it's dealing with psychology. Number two, it's also how they're being influenced based on the factors that are impacting them now. Right. And so it came, there was a great balance. When Adler created his form of psychology, he created a great balance to look at how somebody was influenced by their values and conditioning, but also how they're being influenced by the factors that are going to influence behavior today. and
Right.
now. And the other part of me is really, when I studied psychology, I really came from a framework of Albert Ellis. Now, Albert Ellis, he was very much a psychiatrist that was very just self-directed. He said, listen, you need a plan, you need an action. There's no excuses, right? And so he was very to the point. So I really practiced from Adler's, theoretical premise and principles, as well as Albert Ellis. So when I brought those two together, I'm like, that's kind of a nice balance, because, you get the humanistic part of me, but then you get that directed part of me where you're looking strategy, you're looking at the business, you're looking at those components that are really going to influence based on what's happening in your environment, in society, from, nonprofit to local government to federal government, and how those things are going to influence what you're doing today. Because a lot of times we're looking at the federal government based on how they're doing as a model, what's influencing their behavior, because that's going to be trickling down into even our for-profit private sector and nonprofit.
Right. And I think too that goes into something, again, this conversation really is connecting itself nicely, Summer, because it goes into, like, for yourself, not wanting to be pigeonholed into just one thing or for one area. You're able to realize in building core women that each individual business has their own needs,
Yeah.
that it's not a blanket thing. Do you think that's one of the reasons why you are so optimistic about this year when it comes to the work that Core Women is doing and the team that you put together to help meet businesses where they are and the needs that they have?
Oh, absolutely. Another great question. When I look at the evolution of this business and how I'd like it to, and let me take a step back, and the program that I'm developing, how that looks, and how I'd like it to help other companies kind of mirror that evolution, that the way that's coming together, the way that program's coming together. Because when I look at what I'm bringing together, I'm bringing a very diverse, very unique group of people together. So not do I only have a core team of folks, but I also have facilitators who are going to go into companies and help support them through leadership trainings. And those people come from all walks of life, all backgrounds, and their different ages. And so as we're talking about this new program, Core Mentorship Solutions, we're talking about it being a cross-generational mentorship program. Do you know, Cyrus, right now there are five primary generations out there working, from traditionalists to Gen Zs, right? So right now we've got these other generations out there, Gen Alpha, and I think they just came out with Gen Beta like a couple of days ago, right?
Wow.
So right now we've got five primary generations, and what that looks like is very complex right now. And I think, some people might say, well, how is your mentorship program different than a traditional mentorship program, a peer-to-peer, mentorship program, a reverse mentorship program? Well, it is different because it brings in the psychology of Alfred Adler. I infuse that into the structure of this program. Number one. Number two, it is not a reverse mentorship program. And I say that and weigh very heavily on that idea, because we're trying, with the idea of really imposing Alfred Adler psychology, we're trying to make sure that we're taking out some of that ego and making it a horizontal structure. So if you look at organizations, you might see them as hierarchical, right? And see them as kind of a pyramid going up, right? The chain of command. I've seen a lot of this. I've been part of a microculture like the military. I've seen it. I've been in it as a military spouse. And I'm going to digress here a little bit, being a military spouse isn't just being married to somebody in the military, it's being part of that culture. It's
Right.
assimilating and understanding that culture, right? So the same goes for me. Whenever I go into a company, I need to understand it. So I'm not just going to go in there and say, oh my gosh, we need to change this, this, and this. I'm going to go in there, and this is where it becomes high touch with this program. I'm going to go in there and do an evaluation, understand how that company is functioning right now. What are some of the presenting issues, and how can we be of support, and how can this program help support some of those pain points, right? And so So with that said, there are phases. So if you even go to corewomen.com, that's KORE women.com, you'll see on the Core Mentorship Solutions tab, you will see that we have phases. We break everything down on that page of that website to let you know what it is, what this program is about, the mission of this program, the foundation of this program, because all of that knowledge, expertise is infused into that program. And the people that I'm bringing on also come from different backgrounds. So they might have a legal background. They may have an ethical background. They might have an HR background. They may have a speaking background. They may have a background in, I mean, there are so many different people that are coming on board and jumping on quickly because they know that this is a good idea. And the reason I go back to it's not reverse mentorship is because we're trying to take the ego out. We're changing that hierarchical structure. Now, the business can have a hierarchical structure, but the program doesn't. So when we ask people to become involved with the program, we're trying to omit that. Why? Because we want to open up communication. And with getting ego out of there, guess what that does? That allows for more transparency. That allows for more authenticity. It breaks down those silos. It builds up those communication systems that need to be supported. It also helps with innovation. I mean, there's so much that this program can help with. And because times are changing so quickly, guess what we need to listen to and embrace is our younger folks.
Right.
Our younger generations. Why? Because they know how to transition really quickly. Because guess what? Technology transitions really quickly. And guess what? They grew up with that technology. So they learned how to adapt and adjust and become resilient because things change so quickly. And if we open ourselves up to understanding their perspectives, what they've learned, and learn knowing that we can all exchange knowledge without the ego being in the way, guess what? We're more effective. Retention increases. You're saving money because you're not having to train as much. I mean, there were so many benefits to this.
Yeah, and it goes to what Dr. Velma. Hello, Dr. Velma. Good to be able to see you. Dr. Velma says, this is interesting. I remember attempting to introduce new leadership strategies while working with the government. Their approach was very old school, even back then, 12 years ago. And then she adds, cross-generational approaches are important today to ensure everyone's included. Totally agree with that. And she was agreeing with you, Summer. She says, I was a part of the old top-down leadership model. I introduced bottom-up decision-making, which included the folks who performed the task. It wasn't easy. So I want to talk for our audience then, for those who are just finding out about then Core Women and what you're doing. Summer, let them know, how can they stay connected, but also for the businesses out there, how can they find out more information? You mentioned the website earlier, but how can they find out more information about if this is right for them?
They can go to Core Women, that's KORE women.com. There's a tab called Core Mentorship Solutions. Click on that tab and you can reach me there. You can also reach me at Summer Watson, MHS PhD on LinkedIn. I'm always there as well, and Instagram at Core Women. So those are 3 great ways to connect with me, whether it is to be on the podcast or to explore, the program, the Core Mentorship Solutions program, or even to maybe collaborate, or you need some consultation regarding a program, because I also do leadership programs, both digitally and in person. And I have a team to help with that as well.
Love that. And we've linked that up, the website, for those joining us on the social media sites as well. Don says, I worked 25 years in the government. It seems like private companies are more interested in mentorship leadership strategies. And that's why conversations like this, I think, are so important, Summer. So I'm so glad you can be able to talk to our audience about Core Women, what you're doing in 2025, but also why you're doing it. And I think being able to hear your backstory is so powerful. Thank you so much for stopping by. Looking forward to our next chat together.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here with you, Cyrus.
Pleasure is definitely all mine. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. If you guys came in late, don't worry. If you're joining us on the radio side, you'll find the replay link on our Facebook page. For those joining us via, of course, the social media sites, the replay will be available there as well. Until next time, you'll make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.